Some secrets press against your chest so tightly that every unspoken word grows heavier over time, turning into an insurmountable weight. But today, I'm finally letting go of the burden that's been suffocating me, the truth I've kept buried deep within. At 60 years old, something happened that made me feel more alive than I ever had before, and it arrived at the most unexpected moment. That morning, the bathroom's hot water failed once again, and the faulty faucets, along with my disrupted routines, only reinforced how repetitive my life had become. Solitude, silence, and monotony. Ever since my husband passed away, every time something broke in the house, I had to call someone for help. I randomly selected a plumber from the phone book. Otis, the deep, steady voice on the other end, introduced himself. "I can come over today." There was something about his tone, an indescribable quality that piqued my curiosity. I tried to dismiss it. After all, this was just a plumbing issue. But when the doorbell rang, everything shifted. The moment I opened the door, the young man standing there exuded a vibrant energy that instantly cut through the dullness that had overtaken my world. He slung his toolbox off his shoulder, letting it drop to the floor at the entrance. "Is the bathroom this way?" he asked. For a brief moment, I hesitated before motioning down the hallway. "Yes, yeah, just through that door." If you want to be among the first to hear these astonishing revelations, subscribe and enable notifications. Stay until the end. This story is about to take an incredibly bizarre turn. I led him toward the bathroom door, and as he stepped forward, his broad frame nearly filled the narrow hallway. His muscular build was clearly visible beneath his thin shirt, and for a fleeting second, my gaze lingered on him. It had been so long since I had seen a body like that. I couldn't stop my eyes from wandering, even just a moment longer than I intended. As he stepped inside, there was a self-assurance in the way he moved, as if he wasn't just there to fix a faucet, but rather to unlock something that had been sealed away for years. "Is this the one?" he asked, studying the aged fixture on the counter. Yeah," I stuttered, my voice faltering. Why was I suddenly nervous? This was simply a repair, I reminded myself. But my heart was determined to tell a different story. Otis crouched down, inspecting beneath the sink. As he moved, the fabric of his shirt stretched over his muscles, making every motion more pronounced. And I realized I was holding my breath without even noticing. "It's an old system," he remarked, running his hands over the pipes. "But it can be fixed. It'll take a few hours." His steady confidence caught me off guard. It had been years since I had interacted with someone so young and self-assured. Or maybe that wasn't the issue at all. Maybe it was that something long dormant within me had begun to stir. I was about to leave the bathroom when Otis turned to face me, his eyes locking onto mine. "Can I grab a towel from over there?" he asked, pointing toward a minor leak. I lifted a hand to my face, suddenly self-conscious. "Of course," I replied quickly. Moving toward the cabinet, I fumbled with the door, my fingers trembling slightly. When I passed him the towel, our hands brushed for the briefest moment, but the sensation sent a ripple through my entire body. In that instant, I knew this was more than a simple repair job. The silence between us felt weighted with unspoken things, as if carrying years of longing. "Thanks," he said, returning to his work, but the brief glance in his eyes left me shaken. I kept questioning myself. Was it just a fleeting rush of emotion, or had this young man reignited something within me that had remained frozen for years? As Otis bent over the sink, fixing the faucet, I found myself pacing the small bathroom, my hands either clenched together or gripping the counter. The quiet in the room was stifling, but it wasn't the silence constricting my chest. It was his presence. My eyes kept drifting back to him involuntarily. His youth, his energy, the intense focus he had on his task. I wasn't sure why, but something inside me was awakening, something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. I needed to say something. "Not many young plumbers around," I commented, immediately realizing how unnecessary the remark sounded. "How long have you been doing this?" Otis paused, glancing at me over his shoulder. When our eyes met, a warmth spread through me, though he seemed to deliberately ignore it. "5 years," he answered, refocusing on his task. "Started as an apprentice, then started my own business." I couldn't stop myself from wanting to know more. "How old are you?" I asked, my voice carrying an unmistakable note of admiration. 26, he responded without hesitation. I was surprised by how young he was, yet at the same time, something inside me fluttered. His youth both excited me and pulled me in with an unexplainable attraction. "Ah," I murmured, attempting to smile. "If you hadn't told me, I wouldn't have guessed. You seem older." Otis didn't respond immediately, but I caught a subtle shift in his expression, as if my words had caught him off guard. After a brief pause, he returned to his work, his professionalism allowing me to regain some composure. But that playful part of me still lingered. "Want some coffee when you're done?" I asked, as if casually shifting the conversation. I own an excellent coffee maker, and people often tell me my coffee is incredibly good. He paused briefly, his shoulders stiffening slightly, then glanced at me again, as if making some internal calculation. "Thanks, but I have work to finish today. I'll need to leave as soon as I'm done." I couldn't help feeling a little let down, though it was obvious that Otis was intent on keeping things strictly professional. Perhaps that was part of what made him so fascinating, his unwavering dedication to his craft, maintaining a composed and serious attitude despite his youth. When he completed the task, I noticed him sneaking a few quick glances at me while gathering his tools. There was something in those looks, an attraction, a sense of curiosity, yet also hesitation. "All set," he said, hoisting his toolbox over one shoulder. "The hot water should be functioning properly now, but if there are any problems, just give me a call." "I definitely will," I assured him, gripping the doorway frame. "I appreciate how quickly you handled it. Guess that's the benefit of youth." This time, he allowed himself a small smile, though his professional demeanor remained intact. As he approached the door, he hesitated momentarily, as though on the verge of saying something, but instead, he simply gave me a nod and walked out. It felt like something unspoken had begun forming between us, something that probably shouldn't have, but I had no idea where it would lead. What I did know was that, for the first time in a long while, my heart was racing. I couldn't help but wonder, was this just a plumbing issue, or had this young man entered my life to shift something within it? The following morning, as I stepped into the bathroom for a shower, I discovered that the faucet was still running only cold water. I wasn't sure I'd ever felt so thrilled about something going wrong before. With slightly unsteady fingers, I searched for Otis's contact in my phone and dialed his number, my pulse quickening as it rang. "Hey, Otis," I said, intentionally letting a little urgency seep into my tone. "I think the faucet you fixed yesterday is acting up again. I'm really sorry, but do you think you could come back?" His voice remained as professional as always, though there was the slightest pause before he responded. "Of course. This time I'll bring some extra parts to make sure it's completely fixed. I'll be there in about an hour." I thanked him, and after hanging up, an unexpected wave of anticipation washed over me. This time, I wanted to be more prepared, but at the same time, I wanted to seem completely unprepared. As I rummaged through my wardrobe, my fingers instinctively reached for my favorite black lace nightgown. Just something comfortable, I tried to tell myself. But I knew I wasn't convincing anyone, not even myself, as I caught my reflection in the mirror. When the doorbell finally rang, I inhaled deeply before pulling the door open. Otis's gaze flickered over me for just a fraction of a second before he composed himself again. He carried his tool bag, along with a few additional pipe fittings. "Hey," I greeted, acting as if my outfit was entirely normal. "Hope I'm not being too much of a hassle. This faucet is driving me crazy." Avoiding my eyes, he stepped past me toward the bathroom. "No worries," he replied. "This time I'll make sure it's fixed for good." I followed behind as he crouched to examine the faucet, his hands moving with swift precision. Yet, I noticed a slight tension in his posture. "Does this happen often?" I asked, trying to break the silence. The soft fabric of my nightgown brushed against my skin, making me feel even more daring. "I mean, do the things you repair ever stop working again soon after?" Otis didn't lift his head as he answered. "Sometimes, but this time I've brought everything I might need, so it should be fine." "You're very thorough," I observed, offering him a small smile. "You're really skilled, especially for someone so young." As I reached toward the faucet, my hand accidentally brushed against his arm. Otis stiffened momentarily before resuming his work, his gaze never leaving what he was doing. But even without looking at him, I could sense his unease. "I'm just here to do my job," he finally murmured, his voice noticeably softer. A brief silence stretched between us. His distant attitude only emboldened me further. As he leaned down to inspect a pipe beneath the sink, I lightly rested my fingers against his back for just a second. "It's rare to find someone as talented as you," I said, keeping my tone playful. This time, Otis straightened up and faced me. Something flickered in his expression. Uncertainty, tension, and a visible struggle to maintain control. "Sarah," he said, my name carrying a weight of restraint, as though he was trying to draw a line between us. "I'm almost done here. After this, you won't have to call me again." Yet, for just a moment, the firmness in his voice wavered. Watching him attempt to keep his distance only intensified something inside me, an excitement, a longing I hadn't felt in ages. I wasn't sure how much longer we could maintain this charged atmosphere. The line between us was drawn, but which of us would be the first to cross it? That was the only question left unanswered. As Otis bent over once more to complete his task, I leaned back against the nearby cabinet, quietly watching him. With each slight movement, the delicate fabric of my nightgown settled more closely against my skin. I assumed a deliberately suggestive stance, fully aware that Otis was feigning indifference. Yet, I didn't miss the faint tremor in his hands, evidence that his battle wasn't with me, but with himself. "Are you absolutely certain you know what you're doing?" I asked, infusing a playful edge into my voice. Without lifting his gaze, Otis remained focused on his task, though his breaths came a little quicker. "Of course," he replied curtly. "This is effortless." "Is that so?" I murmured, stepping a fraction closer. "Then why does it keep malfunctioning every couple of days?" Bending down as if reaching for a towel in the cabinet, the thin strap of my nightgown slid off my shoulder. The sensation of wearing it gave me a boost of confidence. Otis's eyes flicked toward me for the briefest second before he quickly returned to his work, though now his hands moved faster, as if rushing to finish. "Maybe something else in the bathroom is causing the issue," he suggested, tightening the faucet. Yet there was an unsteadiness in his tone, an attempt at composure that wavered slightly. "Maybe," I agreed, leaning back against the cabinet. "Or perhaps the real issue is not finding the right touch." I let the words linger, thickening the silence between us. The confined space of the bathroom suddenly became charged, the tension nearly suffocating. Otis hesitated for another moment, then placed his tools down and rose to his feet. His movements were deliberate, yet his face reflected inner conflict, half restraint, half an unspoken longing he was desperately holding back. I moved in closer, until only a few inches remained between us. I could hear his breath. "Otis," I whispered, my voice barely audible. But before I could continue, his hands found my waist. The weight of unspoken emotions filled the air, each second intensifying the moment. The slight tremble in Otis's frame signaled an imminent shift, a breaking point neither of us could deny. The silence between us shattered, replaced only by the sound of our breathing and pounding hearts. "Sarah, we shouldn't do this," he murmured. But this time his voice lacked conviction. It was fraught with helplessness. "Are you sure?" I challenged, drawing even nearer. At that instant, something in him faltered, as if he could no longer resist. Then, without warning, his lips found mine. The kiss started slow, hesitant, but quickly ignited into something fierce. Eyes closed, we melted into each other. With every passing second, Otis's grip on me tightened, and soon we were moving, stumbling into walls, hands tangled together, hearts racing. A feverish energy took over, shifting everything between us at a relentless pace. By the time we reached the bedroom, Otis's grip on my waist was firm, and without hesitation, I quickened my steps. The rapid sequence of events left no room for second thoughts. Our bodies had already succumbed to the pull between us, even as my mind scrambled to keep up. It was both an undeniable mistake and something beyond our control. Inside the bedroom, everything unraveled. Otis's t-shirt remained in the bathroom. His pants lay discarded by the bed. My delicate nightgown was abandoned somewhere in the hallway, dragged along the carpet. The scene was a whirlwind of chaos, yet neither of us could bring ourselves to stop. Lying side by side on the bed, our bodies remained intertwined, breaths aligning in an unspoken rhythm. Time felt suspended, reality blurred. For a brief moment, I couldn't fully comprehend what I was feeling, like being submerged in a vast sea of emotions. Otis's strong arms encased me, my eyes shut, yet I could hear everything, feel everything. "Can you breathe?" I asked, a faint smile on my lips as I rested my head against his chest, my hands still trailing over his skin, absorbing every movement. "Yes," Otis answered, his voice unsteady but resolute. "I think so, but I've never experienced anything like this before." Silence settled for a few moments. Then I noticed the change in his breathing, slightly faster, betraying his thoughts. "Really?" I whispered, my lips still warmer than his. "So, what happens now, Otis?" "I don't know," he admitted, "but I suppose things are just as complicated as they were before, right?" His fingers ran through my hair. "One thing I do know, having you here with me right now means more than anything else." For a fleeting moment, I lost my grasp on time. Everything blurred, consumed by the present. But as clarity gradually returned, a lingering question took hold. Was this a reckless moment of passion, or was it something more? "How do we explain this?" I asked, a small, uncertain smile playing on my lips. Otis held my gaze, a mix of hesitation and longing reflected in his eyes. "Maybe we don't need to explain it," he said softly. "Some things don't require an explanation." We lay still, tangled in the warmth of the moment, our breaths mingling, held captive by its magic. But one question remained, echoing persistently in my mind. Was this fleeting madness, or the start of something we couldn't take back? Meeting Otis's gaze, I asked, "How does this end? Haven't you thought about it?" He considered for a long moment before exhaling deeply. "We'll figure it out later," he finally said, running his fingers through my hair. "Right now, let's just be here." A storm of emotions churned within me, too layered to unravel, but one certainty remained. This night, this moment, belonged to us alone. No matter what the future held, it would forever be etched in memory. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was a space to grasp something deeper, beyond the past, beyond the future, beyond everything. If you've made it this far, I know you're invested in this story. There's so much more to share, and you won't want to miss any of it. Be sure to follow, turn on notifications, and drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let's talk in the comments. Here's your fully paraphrased version while maintaining the meaning, length, and details. There are times in life that shift everything, and only when you look back do you realize that it all began in the most unremarkable way. But that sense of normalcy never lasts. My story unfolded just like that. My stepson, Liam, and I were spending what seemed like an ordinary evening in the living room. Ever since Marquez had passed away, silence had enveloped this house, stretching over 2 long years. During that time, I had been trying to put the scattered pieces of my life back together, yet somehow I had failed to notice how much Liam had changed. Or perhaps, deep down, I had chosen not to see it. We were watching a movie, a mix of action with hints of romance woven in. Liam lounged beside me, stretched out on the couch, with his arms draped casually, exuding an air of confidence, as if he owned the space. It was the first time I had seen him that way. His frame broader, his jawline sharper. He was no longer a boy, but a man in every sense. Yet, I quickly dismissed the thought, reminding myself of who he was to me. He's my stepson, I told myself firmly. But that night, I had no idea that such reminders would soon prove inadequate. As the movie progressed, the intensity of the scenes increased. Liam subtly leaned to the side, resting his arm on the couch behind me, drawing just a little nearer. It felt as though he wanted to say something, yet he remained silent. For a fleeting moment, our eyes met, and in his gaze, I saw something deeper, something that unsettled me. A part of me tried to downplay it, to rationalize the moment. It's nothing, just a film, just my mind misinterpreting things, I reassured myself. But my instincts weren't deceiving me. During one of the more romantic scenes, I felt the faint warmth of his breath grazing my cheek. Without even realizing it, he had moved closer, his hand resting on the couch near my shoulder, so near that I couldn't tell if he was about to touch me or not. Inside, I was in turmoil. Being this close to him made me uneasy, yet, inexplicably, a thrill coursed through me. That reaction unsettled me even more. Everything was unfolding too quickly for me to process my thoughts. Cassidy, he murmured, his voice low and slightly uncertain. I want to tell you something. I turned to him, my pulse quickening. Yes, Liam? I asked, though my voice wavered. He hesitated, then finally said, I just want to thank you for everything. After Marquez passed away, you were always there for me. You didn't have to be, but you were. And because of you, I never felt alone in this house. That's because of you. His words struck me deeply, but the weight of the moment only made me feel more exposed. Of course, Liam, I replied, forcing a smile. I'm glad you're here. But he didn't look away. Me too, he said slowly, his voice carrying a new depth. Being around you, it makes me feel at peace. The air between us grew heavier, charged with something unspoken. He must have sensed it as well, because he withdrew his hand slightly, though his gaze remained locked onto mine. In that instant, I was lost. I didn't know how to react. My heart was pounding wildly, my thoughts in disarray. I tried to maintain the space between us, but something had already shifted within me. He wasn't a child anymore. That realization struck me powerfully that night, and it was one that would alter everything. Liam's demeanor toward me that evening was unlike before, warmer, more emotionally open. For years, I had played a maternal role in his life, but the Liam beside me that night was no longer that young boy. At 19, he was tall, broad-shouldered, undeniably attractive. But still my stepson, wasn't he? That thought was the only thing I clung to as I struggled to suppress the complicated emotions stirring inside me. But I had no way of knowing that it wouldn't end there. When Liam looked at me that night, the depth in his eyes left me defenseless. As I tried to understand why he was being so tender and expressive, I failed to recognize just how close we were to crossing a line. That night was the beginning of a story that would transform my life forever. If you enjoy confessions like this, make sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to support us. Believe me, this story will be one of the most compelling ones you'll ever hear. A few days passed after that evening, and Liam's behavior had noticeably changed. At breakfast, he was more talkative than usual, and his eyes barely strayed from me. He had also begun assisting around the house in ways he never had before. One morning, as I swept the floor, he suddenly spoke up. "Cassidy, let me do that for you," he offered. Before I could respond, he took the broom right from my hands and started sweeping himself. I stared at him, stunned. This was something he had never done before. "I know you manage everything in this house alone," he said, his gaze unwavering. "You're just one woman. Someone needs to help you." His words both surprised and touched me in a way I hadn't expected. "Thank you, Liam," I replied, my voice betraying a slight tremor. A comforting warmth spread through me from the inside, as the way he had so openly acknowledged my loneliness resonated deeply. Later that same day, while I was preparing food in the kitchen, I felt Liam's gaze lingering on me. He stood behind me, leaning against the counter, silently observing, but his eyes weren't fixed on me in the usual way I was accustomed to. His gaze roamed over my body, my hips, my back, my hair. At first, I dismissed it, convincing myself, "No, Cassidy, you're imagining things, overanalyzing." But the intensity in his eyes was undeniable. I tried to appear unaffected, to carry on as if nothing was different. But deep down, I couldn't ignore the subtle excitement that crept in. If I were honest with myself, I liked it. It had been a long time since I had felt someone's attention on me in such a way. Once Liam exited the kitchen, I found myself drawn to the mirror. I stood before my reflection, studying my appearance. Even in my 40s, I still looked attractive. My waist was slim, my hips full, and my body toned, a result of consistent exercise. My light brown hair, soft waves cascading past my shoulders, framed my face in a gentle way. And my breasts, they seemed to have defied time itself. It had been ages since I had taken a moment to really look at myself like this. In that instant, something inside me shifted, an unspoken realization taking shape. A change was happening. I could sense it. As the days passed, Liam's behavior became even more apparent. His eyes followed me constantly. At times, it was a fleeting touch. At others, a single word. But gradually, I began noticing that he was testing the limits between us. And perhaps the most unsettling part of it all was that I wasn't resisting. I was enjoying it. That night, lying in bed, my mind refused to let go of a single thought. Liam wasn't just a boy anymore. He had become a man, a striking, self-assured man. And I had never expected the realization to stir something so electrifying inside me. I had a growing certainty that before long we would reach a moment where all of this would spiral into something impossible to undo. One evening, after spending some time out, I returned home to a sight that left me breathless. Candles flickered everywhere, flowers adorned the space, and the table was elegantly set, radiating an undeniably romantic atmosphere. But more than anything, what truly captivated me was the effort Liam had put into this. It was a birthday surprise. Initially, I struggled to believe it was really meant for my birthday. The level of detail, the intimate setting, it felt more like something designed for a lover. When Liam stepped into the living room to greet me, I immediately understood why the thought had crossed my mind. He was dressed in a crisp white shirt and well-fitted black trousers. I had never seen him this way before. So polished, so confident. It was almost impossible to look away. "I wanted to make this day special for you," he murmured, with a faint smile before handing me a box. Curious, I opened it, and as soon as my eyes landed on what was inside, I stared at him in surprise. A breathtaking, daring red dress lay within, its soft fabric luxurious to the touch, featuring a deep open back and a high slit. A rush of emotions surged through me. Excitement, hesitation. "You bought this for me?" I asked, still taken aback. "Of course. It's your birthday," he replied smoothly. "I wanted you to wear something special. I know it'll look incredible on you." His voice remained steady, but his gaze was piercing, unwavering. Taking the dress, I retreated to my room. In front of the mirror, I let the rich red fabric slide against my skin, and a sensation I hadn't felt in years coursed through me. As I slipped it on, I realized just how long it had been since I had worn something that accentuated my figure like this. The slit revealed glimpses of my long legs, while the dress hugged my waist, perfectly highlighting my shape. I stood there, taking in my reflection, and after a few quiet moments, a smile ghosted across my lips. I whispered to myself, "This is insane. I'm getting dressed up for Liam." But there was no denying it. I looked absolutely stunning. I examined myself more closely, acknowledging truths I had ignored for years. Yes, I was in my late 40s, but the way this dress fit me made me feel as though I had stepped back into my 20s. My skin was still smooth, my light brown hair cascaded effortlessly around my shoulders, adding a graceful elegance to my appearance. And deep inside, I felt a thrill, one I hadn't experienced in a very long time. Drawing in a deep breath, I left the room. As I descended the stairs and entered the living room, Liam's eyes found me, locking onto me with an intensity that made the moment feel utterly surreal. He didn't look away. His admiration was unmistakable. Smiling, I spoke. "I owe this to you. The dress is beautiful." But as soon as I said it, I quickly diverted my gaze, suddenly feeling self-conscious beneath Liam's unwavering stare. "I knew it," he said, his eyes still fixated on me. "You look absolutely breathtaking in that dress." Hearing the sincerity in his words, my heart pounded, but I tried to downplay it. "You're exaggerating," I said lightly. Liam didn't argue. Instead, he guided me toward the table he had so carefully prepared. 2 wine glasses sat beside an elegantly placed bottle of red wine. For a moment, I felt as if I had stepped into an entirely different reality. This didn't feel like a casual birthday celebration. It felt like a romantic dinner, but I chose not to say anything because I had already been pulled into the atmosphere entirely. Liam uncorked the bottle and poured the wine into our glasses. Soft music played in the background, adding to the warmth of the moment. As I took a sip, the rich, velvety taste coated my tongue, leaving behind a lingering sweetness. At first, our conversation revolved around the past, memories of Marquez, the shifts in our lives. But as the evening progressed, I noticed the subtle way Liam was steering the discussion toward something much more intimate. Then, all at once, he said my name, Cassidy. His voice was soft, yet carried undeniable seriousness. "How is it possible for a woman like you to be alone? I just can't understand it." My eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, I was utterly speechless. "Liam, loneliness isn't always something you choose. Sometimes, life just leaves you on your own," I responded, my voice soft but steady. There was something unreadable in his expression, something deeper beneath his gaze. "You don't have to stay that way," he murmured, lifting his glass and bringing it to his lips. "A woman like you has desires, Cassidy, and I'm right here." His words caught me off guard, hitting me far harder than I had anticipated. I swallowed the lump in my throat, raising my own glass to take another sip. But even as I did, my eyes remained fixed on Liam. This night had shifted. It was no longer just a birthday celebration. It was transforming into something entirely unexpected. When Liam finally placed his wine glass down, his gaze never wavered. "Cassidy, you look absolutely stunning tonight," he said, his voice deep and unwavering. "I wanted this evening to feel special for you, because you deserve that." I glanced down briefly, offering him a shy smile as I gently twirled the glass in my hand. "That's really thoughtful of you, Liam, but sometimes I can't help but wonder why you go through all this effort," I admitted, my voice quiet but genuine. Liam arched a brow slightly before responding. "Because you deserve it," he said simply. "You're not just a stepmother, Cassidy. You're so much more than that." His words held a sincerity that took me by surprise, leaving me profoundly moved. For a moment, neither of us looked away. The silence stretching between us only amplified the tension, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Yet I couldn't bring myself to speak, unwilling to break whatever this was. Liam slowly pushed back his chair and stood, moving around the table until he was standing beside me. Placing one hand on the edge of the table, he leaned in, his presence overwhelming. "You shouldn't have to settle for someone who doesn't truly see you for who you are," he said, his voice laced with conviction. "No one should ever take a woman like you for granted." "Liam," I started, but the words stuck in my throat, leaving me at a loss. Before I could say anything else, he moved even closer, his face mere inches from mine. "I can't keep pretending I don't feel this," he whispered. Then, before I could process what was happening, his lips met mine. The kiss sent a shockwave through me, unraveling something deep inside. There was passion in it, warmth, connection, something I hadn't felt in years. Liam's hands moved gently to my waist, pulling me against him. What had begun as pure surprise quickly became something I couldn't resist. Our lips remained intertwined, the moment stretching endlessly, as if time itself had stopped. But then, reality crashed into me like a tidal wave. I slowly pulled away, my breathing uneven. This isn't right," I murmured, my voice trembling. I barely managed to find my words. "Liam, I need to go to my room." Liam exhaled deeply, his eyes still fixed on me. "I'm sorry, Cassidy," he said, his voice steady, yet filled with a quiet intensity. But I couldn't hold back what I feel. Without another word, I rose from my seat and hurried toward my room. As soon as I stepped inside, I shut the door behind me, leaning against it while taking in a shaky breath. My heart was racing, my thoughts spinning as I tried to make sense of what had just happened. Moving toward the edge of my bed, I sat down and caught my reflection in the mirror. Even my own image seemed as shaken as I felt. "How did this happen?" I whispered to myself. The whirlwind of emotions swirled in my mind, mixing with the lingering effects of the wine. I barely made it under the covers before the weight of the evening pressed down on me. As soon as my head hit the pillow, Exhaustion overtook me, and I drifted into sleep, lost in the emotions of the night. But the night was far from over. At some point later, a faint sound stirred me from sleep, and my eyelids fluttered open. In the dim glow, I spotted a shadow near the doorway. The door was gradually creaking open, and through the faint light, Liam's silhouette emerged. "Cassidy," he murmured softly. His voice was quiet, yet there was an unmistakable determination behind it. My heartbeat picked up speed as he stepped into the room, the silence of the night surrounding us. "I know I shouldn't be here, but I just can't stay away," he admitted, while gently shutting the door behind him. At that instant, the intensity in Liam's gaze made it abundantly clear. The night was far from ending. The resolve in his eyes and the deep, unwavering tone of his voice completely captivated me. My heart pounded so fiercely that it felt as if it might burst from my chest. I knew I had to say something. As my eyes met his, years of emotions I had buried away suddenly surged to the surface. "I know I owe you an answer, Liam," I whispered, my voice unsteady, yet filled with raw honesty. "I feel the same way about you, and I want you." The fire in Liam's eyes completely enthralled me. The emotions I had long repressed could no longer be held back. My heart thudded against my ribs, and I realized I had no choice but to respond. Drawing in a deep breath, I steadied my trembling voice. "I know I need to tell you," I murmured, fixing my gaze on his. "I feel the same. I want you." As those words escaped my lips, the mixture of joy and astonishment that flickered across Liam's face emboldened me. A soft smile curved my lips as I closed my eyes briefly, gathering my courage. "Please, before I lose my nerve," I whispered, my hands reaching for my shoulders. Slowly, I let the delicate straps of my dress slide down. The fabric slipped off my body and pooled onto the floor, leaving me standing before him. Liam's breath hitched, and the admiration and longing in his expression only heightened the excitement rushing through me. Without hesitating, Liam moved toward me, and the moment our lips met, passion ignited between us. His kiss was so fervent, so intense, that it felt like time itself had stopped. His arms wrapped around my waist, drawing me firmly against him as our kiss deepened. At last, he carefully led me toward the bed. As we reached its edge, Liam's hands guided me onto the mattress with gentle precision. Even as I lay there, my gaze never wavered from his. The weight of his body over mine made me completely surrender. Liam bent down, swiftly pulling off his shirt and tossing it aside. He placed his knees on the bed and leaned over me, his eyes ablaze with desire and determination. That smoldering intensity only stoked the fire within me further. His fingers traced my cheek before finding my lips once more. At that moment, every barrier that had kept us apart over the years completely dissolved. For the first time in over 2 years, I felt something indescribable. I gave myself over to the moment as Liam continued, my hands gripping the sheets tightly. I let myself get lost in the overwhelming tension and excitement coursing through me. When I finally opened my eyes and looked at Liam, taking in his flushed face and broad shoulders, I couldn't resist. My hands instinctively traveled to his back, and in a fleeting rush of exhilaration, I dug my nails into his skin. Liam must have enjoyed it, because his heartbeat quickened even more. I placed my palm over his chest, feeling the rapid thudding beneath my fingers. And in that instant, he could no longer hold back. He let himself go completely. We had given ourselves to each other, and as Liam lay breathless beside me, I knew everything had changed. That night, while lost in quiet, romantic conversations, I drifted off to sleep. From this moment forward, my life was going to take a completely new path. I had just experienced the most blissful night of my life, and deep down, I understood that this was only the beginning. Make sure to stay tuned, because this story is far from over. If you've made it this far, I know my journey has left an impact on you. There's so much more to tell, and you won't want to miss a single moment. Don't forget to follow, turn on notifications, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts on this story.